Welcome to MINDSHOCK. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and we are refining the logical analysis system today. This is part two. We did one earlier in the day. I know there's different people in different time zones, and a lot of listeners have wanted input into the analysis debate system. So here's our chance to do it. As always, if you want to help support the MindShock channel, you could donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. If you don't comment or like on enough videos, you won't be getting the notifications, even if you have them enabled. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. Patrons do get priority for case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast, or requests. You could also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comments section. Hello, Lightwalker, Zapton Kaboom, Rune Tomps, Thorson, and Captain Hatnin. Tutsaka is like the #1 MindShock fan. He hangs out here all the time. He was here getting roasted earlier in the day, and I think the past couple days too. I wonder if that's one of Craig's altars. Give a couple minutes for people to get in here. Oh, Tutsaka is indeed here. Is anybody surprised? So, for those that missed the earlier stream, we were determining super fallacies and dingers in addition to zingers. Now, this is a rough draft, so we're going to do a recap at the end of this to kind of see exactly how we want to count all of these metrics. So far, Craig has 3 super fallacies, which would be subtracted from the total fallacy count. So he would have 140 regular fallacies, 3 super fallacies, and 3 or 4 dingers. Still kind of undecided. His first dinger, I believe, was when he said he didn't have the star plate from the eclipse data hoax of 1919. And then, of course, what do you want energy to be? I mean, that is just incredibly amusing. And then the third dinger was when he answered Caleb's question about what energy is. He followed up the what do you want it to be with the amount of work done, not the capacity to do work, but the amount of work done. And a lot of us were on the fence on whether or not that should have been a dinger, but I believe the inquisitive tone in which he answered that, like the amount of work done, like he wasn't even sure about his incorrect definition, like a small child in an elementary classroom. So that's, to me, that tipped the scales for the dinger. And he kind of repeated a lot of the equivalence between mass and energy, which was quite silly, and possibly his 140th fallacy could either be a 4th dinger or a 4th super fallacy. We put that in the maybe category. So we'll be picking up right where we left off. Does anybody in the chat have questions about fallacies, zingers, dingers, or super fallacies? A hat trick fallacy would automatically qualify as a super fallacy, or a single fallacy that is just so astoundingly dumb that it would make someone spit out their drink if they were drinking. That would also classify as a super fallacy. Anybody have any questions on any of this before we resume? Dark side of the moon is back. Okay, so we will continue here. And I'll be stopping it for input if anybody wants to call out dingers or super fallacies, or if they think I missed a fallacy for Caleb or whatever. A lot of goofs with a lot of claims like Tutsaka. Feel free to cite evidence of such, or just whine and cry like you normally do, Tutsaka. Those Dunning-Kruger stylings are amusing as well.
Observations. That's only one step of the scientific method. Other than making observations, and even if you look at the star plate from 1919 from Arthur Eddington's observation, some of the stars are moving away from the sun. I don't know if you saw Bennett, Robert Bennett. Either way, there's a PhD that's been talking with Wits It Gets It, and he's been exposing that the star plates didn't even show that all stars tended towards the sun. Some of them moved away, some of them moved horizontally. Not all of them are tending towards the sun. So I'd love to see an observation that shows every single star and the light that's being emitted from it curving towards the sun because of space-time. And either way, it's a begging the question fallacy where you're assuming that it's because of space-time. It's just as equal for me to say, oh no, there's actually unicorns up there that are tied to the sun that are pulling in the light towards it. As long as the math works out the same way, it's basically the same assumption that you're making, that it's space-time gravitation.
Okay, you do realize that assumptions aren't a problem in science. In fact, it's kind of a foundation of science. You have to.
Oh, wow. That has to be a super fallacy. Assumptions, not only are they not a problem in science, they are the foundation. Craig thinks that assumptions are the foundation of science. Oh, man. Oh, man. Not experimentation to actually test and examine the hypothesis. And by the way, a hypothesis is not an assumption, it's an educated guess based on something, not nothing, not hallucinations and assumptions. So that is no question. I mean, is that a dinger or a super fallacy? What would that be categorized as? Assumptions aren't a problem in science. Maybe that's not a super fallacy or a dinger. Now, assumptions are the foundation of science. Now that I guess that would be a dinger. Would that be a dinger or a super fallacy? I mean, it's just such an insane hallucination that would cause someone to spit out their drink if they were drinking. Assumptions are the foundation of science. That's funny. I'm gonna put it as a dinger, unless the listeners want to dispute that or think it fits better. It's not a fallacy per se. I believe we can classify that as I mean, if there's a couple different ones, I'm trying to kind of see what the easiest one to classify that. You could probably say that it's just an argument from false premises. Basically, an incorrect proposition. I mean, you could also rope in circular reasoning logical fallacy because if he thinks that assumptions are the foundation of science and all of science should be going from assumptions and they're not a problem and you can just assume anything at any time, then that would obviously explain a lot of his arguments. So you could classify it as a fallacy, but I guess Dinger would be easier. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know. What does everybody think? It's kind of both. I mean, I outlined this at the beginning of the earlier stream I did on this earlier in the day, where it could be both, but we're not going to give him a super fallacy and a dinger. I mean, I guess we could. Hmm. Assumptions are the foundation of science. Wow. Rune thinks it's a dinger. I'm leaning dinger as well. What does everybody else think? Boggin's been around for a bit. What's everybody's opinion? Assumptions are the foundation of science. Should that be a super fallacy or a dinger? Okay, we got 2 for dinger. I'm leaning dinger, although it could be either. Captain votes super fallacy. Anybody else want to chime in? Is saying assumptions, so not educated guesses. I mean, educated guesses aren't the foundation of science either. Strict methodology is the foundation of science, but would saying assumptions are the foundation of science, is it more fallacious? I mean, even though it's fallacious and a self own, which category does it most belong to? This is tough. Should we let Tutsaka decide? Foundation is something that is built upon the bedrock of something. So the scientific method would be the foundation of science. or any kind of established system, a system of knowledge, a science. Assumptions would never be systemized knowledge because they're assumptions. I mean, you could say that hypotheses or educated guesses, not assumptions, educated guesses are a critical part of the scientific method. But even educated guesses, I mean, I guess you could argue they could be the foundation of science, depending on how broad you want to go. But an assumption would never be a foundation of systemized knowledge. Welcome back, Heracles. We're discussing Craig's latest statement. So he said, assumptions are the foundation of science. So is that a super fallacy or a dinger? We're all trying to decide here. All right, Tsutsaka, since your mind is in the gutter, we're going to have to give you a timeout. Heracles votes dinger. I was leaning dinger as well. Rune voted dinger. Boggin voted dinger. Captain Hatnin voted super fallacy. All right, let's go with dinger then. We also had another possible dinger earlier. What was that on? His 140th. Now let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Neil, it's definitely not a zinker. Well, yeah, that's a good point, Heracles. It is good, and it could be either. And what we talked about earlier, I mean, we could count it for both, but we probably should reserve that for fall on the floor laughing. So a regular super fallacy or dinger should be something that would cause you to spit your drink out if you were drinking, but something that is just so astonishingly dumb. Maybe we can put it both for a super fallacy and dinger, but this wasn't all time. It was just, yeah, third category. Okay, so he's up to 4 dingers now. I put him maybe at 140, but this would be at the 145th. Fallacy would be the 4th dinger. All right, so let's continue here.
Make an assumption. That's what a hypothesis is, to be able to test something.
A hypothesis is to be able to test something. What does that mean? A hypothesis is not the ability to test something. No, that's got to be another dinger. I mean, that has to be another dinger. Like, he's going rapid fire now. A hypothesis is not the ability to test something. That would be a hypothesis is an educated guess, and there could be a lot of criteria for that. But it's not the ability to carry out a test. Oh man! So we're at he's on 5 dingers now. I mean, we really gotta appreciate Craig here. He's caused us to really have to re-examine the system and refine it because, you know, his level of gopher is just something we've never seen before. So he's helping us out here. I mean, somebody needs to do a mashup. I know on Twitter there's a number of users that are doing MindShock mashups. They need to do one of all of his dingers now that we're counting him up because this might be the worst performance on any so-called debate. Hypothesis is the ability to test. I mean, I think I need a second. I forgot that he had said that the first time around. Oh, man. Okay, all right, let's try to get composed here. Am I the only one laughing this hard? All right, let's try to get focused here. We got a long way to go to make our way through this. So, okay, I think he just answered my previous question. So it appears that he does understand what the word assumption means by this response. Now, obviously, his response completely deflected and dodged the point that Caleb is making there, because if math works out a certain way, where these are actually, Austin Whitsitt is again another guy who's pointed out that these are a lot of the times these are post dictions, not predictions. So you think something is a certain way, something is X, and then it's reverse engineered to match it with literally all opposing evidence being thrown out, all admittedly in terms of the hoax of 1919. So not just done, but admitted to be done. So it's not like they were even hiding the fact that they were throwing out all non-matching so-called evidence of these fallible observations made using fallible human technology. Because there's different conditions, they couldn't even really get the observations properly. That's another thing. Goofs like Craig, a lot of these scientism cultists, they hallucinate that humans are infallible, human technology is infallible, therefore all measurements and calculations are perfect anyway. Like, it's such a weird hallucination by these goofs to just pretend it's all infallibly done, even if all these people are honest, which they are not, and Eddington admitted that as well. All admitted on record. So it's not like this is just random theorizing and speculating. All admitted on record. So regarding post-dictions, so yes, as Caleb stated, it is a begging the question fallacy. It's also a circular reasoning logical fallacy, a false dichotomy fallacy, and a false cause logical fallacy. These fallacies are all related. If you haven't looked at the Logic 101 podcast I did on MINDSHOCK, it was the lead up to the Flat Earth debate between Flat Earth Dave and so-called Professor Dave, one of the greatest decimations in debate of all time. So, yeah, these fallacies are all related because people are hallucinating that it's not just about an assumption of a prediction. It's about building a house of cards of assumptions and then making certain conclusions based on a house of cards. So none of the pillars are actually legitimate or science-based. And so Craig here is deflecting. I guess he has no other way to cope here at being completely exposed as this goof, but clearly he understands what assumption is. He's saying it's not a problem. It's a problem if you care about the truth. It's not a problem in terms of a very small part of the scientific method. Yes, you're going to assume something, this is true, but that's why dependent variables, independent variables, and controls are so important. Indeed, Tutak. You might want to check the dictionary for the definition of assumption and hypothesis so you know the difference. Welcome, Big Pine Sailing. Did you happen to catch the earlier stream? Because we're refining the logical analysis of debates here. So we added super fallacies, which are just astoundingly silly fallacies, or a hat trick fallacy where someone stacks 3 or more fallacies in a single statement, which is impressive. So this would be the equivalent of, let's say, a significant strike or a high power shot in boxing or kickboxing or MMA, where it would be scored higher than just like a regular light jab. And then dingers are just incredible cell phones. And the criteria, the analogy that I kind of gave is if you're drinking something and you heard something like, what do you want it to be in reference to energy? Or assumptions are the foundation of science, you might spit your drink out at hearing that. So that would be enough to qualify for a super fallacy or a dinger. Heracles, I get a lot of physics bases video suggestions. I ask their comments if they know about the hoaxes around relativity. They all call me a quack. Well, that's the classic scientism cope, is to just go for the ad hom without adding the argument. So insults or name calling without added arguments are ad homs. Hello, Riz. What's going on? So let's continue here. And again, everyone in the chat, if you hear something that should be a super fallacy or a dinger, call it out. If you've been sent here by Craig as one of his trolls and you think I missed the fallacy for Caleb, you can also call that out. We're trying to be as accurate as possible here. So you can see whether your methodology is valid in whether or not the assumption is true or not true, what it would look like otherwise. And you notice how Craig is just avoiding the components of the scientific method, the critical components, other than the assumption. He's avoiding them like the plague. But Caleb, calm, cool, and composed here. So pretty impressive showing from Caleb here thus far. I actually think he's letting Craig off the hook here, but maybe his strategy is just to let Craig sink himself, which he's doing so severely here. You know, you can't really fault Caleb for that.
And you can call it what you want. Space-time is just the name that they've given it. You can call it unicorns if you like. That's fine. I will call it Bob. It doesn't.
So now he's going with the non-congruent argument logical fallacy. The point. Well, it was also a red herring logical fallacy, because he stacked those two. So it's not enough to qualify for a super fallacy, because a super fallacy would require 3 fallacies stacked. Yes, Riz, high score wins the Dunning-Kruger championship. So that's kind of the point of us refining the system, because light jabs are not the same thing as big power shots. Hey, Dave Scott, I was hoping you'd show up. We need your input. We're implementing your dinger. You were the one that came up with dingers, right? I think Dave was the one who came up with the concept of dingers, and I was toying with super fallacies, and now I think we should implement them both, because dingers are specifically self-owned, and super fallacies are simply just astoundingly dumb fallacies, or a hat trick fallacy where it's 3 or more logical fallacies stacked simultaneously with a single statement. Point wasn't that they were unicorns. Wow, I mean, this is kind of insane. I mean, should we give... I don't know what we should do here with Craig, because he's saying it doesn't matter whether you call it a unicorn or not. I mean, that's not even what's being discussed. So it's a non-congruent argument and a red herring. Yeah, I thought it was you, Dave. That was a good idea for dingers. Dave Scott's one of the most astute MindShock listeners, by the way. Look out for his comments. They're always on point. So what are we going to do here with Craig? Because saying it doesn't matter what you call it when the subject isn't what you call it, that's not what is being discussed here. So, I mean, I don't know if that would specifically make you spit your drink out. So my criteria for a super fallacy or a dinger is if you're drinking something and he said something so dumb, it would cause you to spill your drink out. And if it causes you to fall on the floor laughing, then I believe that's enough to count it for both a super fallacy and a dinger at the same time. That's my criteria. Everybody can give their opinions. What's up, Glitched? So do people think that's enough? They're saying it doesn't matter what you call it when the subject isn't even about calling something. It's about whether or not you can prove what the cause is. I mean, I don't know. I'm on the fence on that. Because if I was drinking something, I'm not sure I would spit it out, but I would definitely pause. I wouldn't be able to continue drinking perfectly. Yeah, we talked about that earlier, Riz. Like, Craig's idea of following the scientific method is if you make a prediction, like, for example, Bigfoot brings the mail every morning, or it's in the mailbox by noon. So if you make the prediction that the mail's going to be in the mailbox at noon, then you go and check. You make the observation, which according to Craig is the experiment itself. And if the mail is in the mailbox as you predicted, that must mean your hypothesis of Bigfoot brought the mail, that must mean Bigfoot brought it. If you check the mailbox and the mail is in there, according to Craig. Like, it wasn't Mothman, it wasn't Chupacabra, it had to have been Bigfoot because that was what your prediction was and your observation of the mail in the mailbox. matched the prediction. That's Craig's idea of the scientific method. So would saying so would saying that it doesn't matter what you call it while not understanding what anything being talked about is that enough for a super fallacy or a dinger? I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence. What does everybody think? I'm going to defer to the listeners here. Sphinx Bear, what's up? I want the opinion of the MindShock listeners on whether that was enough for a super fallacy or a dinger. Because he did stack 2 fallacies, not 3, which would automatically qualify it for a super fallacy. Well, yeah, that's an automatic qualification. But if he says 1 fallacy that's just so out there stupendously dumb, you can still hit the super fallacy. 3 automatically gets you 1, but if you only have 1 or 2, if they're dumb enough, they could still qualify for a super fallacy. Those are my criteria. Obviously, the listeners, all you guys can give your own. Yeah, Heracles, I'm thinking the same, like dangerously close to qualifying for that. Maybe like a power shot that someone almost put their hand on the canvas, so it doesn't count as a knockdown. Dave Scott. Yeah, it's a shame Maxwell's not here. His input would have been just critical. It would have been critical in determining all of this. All right, we need to make a decision. Oh yeah, caught the yeah. That's so almost a super fallacy or dinger, but not quite. I think I'll agree with that, Heracles. I think I'll agree with that. So let's continue. I mean, he's actually spinning not just the non-congruent argument, but also no true Scotsman, as if saying something space, calling something space-time. That's not the argument. That's not the variable. He completely missed, possibly intentionally, because he doesn't understand what the scientific method even is, or just basic logic. That's why I always advocate to start the debate off with these points. Because if it's even on the screen, it should be on the screen, just the major fallacies. That's a zinger for Riz. That's hilarious. Tutaka commented, I will not stand for this decision to go on for any less than half an hour. And Riz responded, we're going to dilate time for you, so it's not so long. Oh man, that's funny. Sphinx Bear posted, we fell into temporal pocket. You guys are hilarious. Like maybe 5 major fallacies and the scientific method with dependent variable, independent variable, and control highlighted. So that way anybody, like a lot of these goofs like Craig, would they feel even more silly spewing the nonsense coming out of their mouth when there's something on the screen clearly demonstrating how everything they're saying is nonsense, because it's not aligning scientifically. It's just everything they're saying is religious dogma. And it's so anti-science, but they're pretending it's scientific or legitimate.
Matter the name. The fact is, the prediction is that when you go and look at something, i.e. this thing will happen at this particular time and place. So, if you want to go through the scientific method.
Wait, did he just say the prediction is that something would happen is the prediction itself? That would be the prediction coming true, because a prediction can either come true or not come true. Did he just give the definition of the prediction as only being something that actually came true? No, but not even that, Riz. It wasn't even specifically the post-diction. He was saying that the definition of a prediction itself is that it was coming true, not that it was made. Is that a super fallacy or a dinger? I'm voting dinger. What do you guys think? I mean, that's pretty dumb to think that a prediction can only be something that came true. I mean, that would have been a successful prediction as opposed to an unsuccessful one. So is he not aware? That would actually explain some things. That would explain some things. If he thinks predictions are only things that actually come true. Okay, Sphinx Bear votes Dinger. I vote Dinger. Not a major dinger, but like a light dinger. I don't think he caught the ropes on that. Yeah, Heracles agrees. He tried to catch the ropes, but it didn't work. So we got 2 for Dinger. Anybody else think it's a dinger? Are there any people who are vehemently denying that that was a dinger? Dave Scott, what do you think? You invented the dinger category. I think we need to defer to Dave Scott whenever we're unsure because he's the one who created this dinger category. He needs the credit for this. Riz is hilarious in this chat. Dave, you still around? Are you able to type a response? Or are you busy with something? Glitched also votes Dinger. I think any kind of time. Oh, wow. Dave Scott is saying not Dinger worthy. I mean, it's not on the level of saying, what do you want energy to be? Or that assumptions are the foundation of science. So, yeah, Dave Scott, I mean, that's interesting. But to say that a prediction is something that happens as predicted, that's not a prediction. So, I mean, that's. I mean, is an argument from a false? Is it that strong of an argument from false premise that it would qualify as a super fallacy, Dave? What about that? Now, I might have to agree with Dave that it might not specifically be a dinger, but is it that much of a false premise? Like, is it that deficient that it would qualify as a super fallacy, even only being one fallacy? What do you think, Dave? Or what about half a dinger? That would solve a lot of problems. Because I think we could all agree that was worth at least half a dinger. Thank you, Will Smith. Get involved here, Will Smith. We're trying to decide whether saying that a prediction is something that occurs as predicted, as opposed to the actual definition of a prediction, which is simply something that you think could happen, which may or may not happen. So, Riz, zingers are a good dig at somebody. So you can't have a zinger against yourself. A dinger would be the equivalent of that. That would be a self own. When you own the other guy, that's a zinger. And a super fallacy is just an incredibly silly fallacy or a stack of 3 or more fallacies with a single statement. Also, we have to figure something out here. We didn't go over this on the earlier stream today. If it's possible to get half a dinger or even half a zinger, maybe we should add halves to both dingers and zingers. Because if something is like an okay attack or own against an opponent, it could be worth half a zinger. And if something is a self own but not like a huge self own, it could be half a dinger. Because saying that, I mean, but by that logic, we'd have to revisit because I forgot what the previous dinger that we didn't give Craig a dinger for, like he caught the ropes. That would have been a half a dinger, though. So should we allow half dingers and half zingers? Or would that just overcomplicate everything? A dinghy, a small dinger. Well, we might have to, depending on the layout and how many people are debating, I might not be able to put the whole word dinger on the screen, so I might have to just put D or ding in which case that would be difficult to differentiate between a dinghy and a dinger. Neil votes to keep it simple. All dingers are fallacies, but not all fallacies are dingers. Not necessarily. Dingers are self-owned. They could also be fallacies. And I don't know if you just got here, but my analogy is yes, Sphinx Bear. That's true. And we also have to put up like basic scientific method screens up. So yeah, we do have the real estate on the screen is sacred. So we have to minimize the categories. So what I gave the analogy to, let's say you're drinking something and you hear someone say something like, what do you want it to be in regards to what energy is? That would cause me to spit out my drink. So that would be an incredible cell phone, which would be a dinger. It would also be a fallacy because that's like a tu quo qui fallacy on steroids. Like, for example, if Caleb asks, what is energy? And Craig responds, well, what do you think energy is? That would be a standard tu quo qui logical fallacy. Like, no, you answer the question. But saying, what do you want it to be? Like, that's so ramped up on steroids. That could be a super fallacy or a dinger. So we have to decide. Yes, Will. He said, well, so he basically defined a prediction as something that was shown to have happened. So apparently he's unaware that you can make predictions that don't actually come true. So we're trying to decide whether that would be a super fallacy, a dinger, or maybe we should do half dingers. I'm actually hesitant to do half dingers just because, first of all, we'd have to go back and start this all over because he got at least a couple of half dingers. And also, does it really just overcomplicate it too much? So if it's a basic a dinger is a self-own. So it may or may not be a fallacy. It's just you make yourself look dumb, like you trip over yourself. Like in a boxing match, you not only slip, but you knock yourself out for like a 9 count. So it may or may not be a logical fallacy. And a super fallacy would just be an extremely silly logical fallacy. And like I said, if something is both a super fallacy and a dinger, we can count it for both categories, but it would have to be all time. And I don't think anything is qualified thus far for that. Oh, a zinger is simply just exposing your opponent or just demonstrating intellectual superiority. So it could be a joke at their expense, which isn't necessarily calling out their fallacy. It could be, but not necessarily. So it's not necessarily related to logical fallacies. It's just like a taunt, a successful taunt pointing out your opponent's cluelessness. It's up to Dave whether it's a dinger. So, well, Dave said not a dinger because it's just not as silly. But I don't think Dave answered on whether or not it should count as a super fallacy. So, Dave, we're waiting on you. Do you believe stating that a prediction, Craig's definition of a prediction, something that was shown to have come true, is enough for a super fallacy? Just an argument from a false premise, because obviously that's not the actual definition of what a prediction is. Predictions can turn out to be true or not true. Yeah, Heracles, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. We really need to be conservative with the dingers. But is it a super fallacy, though? Because it is quite, I mean, it's such a silly art, because, I mean, just, it's not like he got the definition of an advanced word wrong, because that would obviously not be a super fallacy. But to get the definition of something like prediction wrong or hypothesis, like, to get such a basic word wrong, like, is that enough to be a super fallacy? So Glitched is deferring to Hercules or Heracles. I'm deferring to Dave Scott says it's not a dinger, so we can respect that. But the question now is it a super fallacy? Is it that much of an argument from a false premise that it deserves to be elevated to a super fallacy status? Dave Scott, what do you think? It would almost make me yeah, me too. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's right on the fence. It's right. I mean, it's pretty silly. I guess it depends on what mood you're in and how distracted you be. Dinger was originally reserved for rare. Yeah. Okay. Good point, Dave Scott. I do want to include super fallacies as well, though. So just because it's impressive to be able to stack three fallacies on top of each other with a single statement. Now, clearly, giving a wrong definition and argument from false premise, that's not three fallacies stacked. Argument from false premise. The premise that a prediction is something that has come true is false. Obviously. This is an argument from false premise. Is there anybody else that wants to chime in? We got about 20 people in here. I'm on the fence of it even being a super fallacy. It's right on the fence. Like, just because a prediction is such a basic word, like even small children know the definition. So getting that wrong, like, I mean, it might be a super fallacy to get such a basic word wrong. I don't know, man. We need more input. Come on. Will Smith, what do you think? You were in the Men in Black. I mean, you got some good opinions. I'm undecided. It's right on the edge of being a super fallacy. That's a good point, Will Smith. I mean, I'm not sure if he could read, though, because, again, there seem to be some mental issues. But forget about him. I mean, we're basically talking about what's coming out of his mouth, because theoretically, I mean, I haven't seen things this dumb come out of other people's mouths, but theoretically they could. So how would we rate them with this new system? So, Heracles, that's a good point. If it was anybody else who would have counted as a super fallacy, but because Craig is so deficient, for him, it might not be a super. Just because he says things like, "What do you want it to be?" in terms of what energy is. That's a good point, Heracles. Are we going to skew? So is this going to be like on a curve skewed to the individual on whether or not we count something as a super fallacy or dinger? Heracles, that's an excellent point. That is excellent. This is good. We're really refining the system here. That's a great point. That's a great point, because if you're scoring a Mike Tyson fight and he's always throwing bombs, even his like mid-power shot or a low-power shot for a different boxer, that might count as a significant or power shot, but for Mike Tyson it wouldn't. So I think Heracles wins here. I think that's actually good. I think in cases of borderline, we should defer to that. Heracles saved the day here. That's on point, man. That's great. That seems to be good. I think going by that might be the best metric. Because again, you might not necessarily score the Mike Tyson boxing match the same way as other excellent point. Okay, so we'll go with that. It's not a super fallacy or a dinger because we're considering the person making it. Okay. 3 dingers. What do you mean, Will Smith? He's got 3 super fallacies and 5 dingers. All right, so let's continue here.
Good. The observation is, I don't know, things accelerate towards the ground on Earth at 9.
Look how he completely missed all the points, possibly intentionally. It's not. Caleb is not disputing that something happened. We're talking about why. The very foundation of science. It's not about, oh, you predicted something would happen. Why is it happening? Sphinx Fair. Almost. He usually stacks 2. Also, it's well, if it's a run-on sentence like it usually is, it might be 3 fallacies per sentence, but I split them up in phrases, so I just counted them separately as individual fallacies. And I think we're gonna have to defer to we could call this the Heracles rule. The Heracles rule is we have to we have to factor who's doing this, because someone else might be getting a lot more super fallacies based on their baselines. I mean, that's why you have the entire scientific method, so you don't just say, oh, it was God. Oh, it was demons that caused it. That's the whole purpose of science and the scientific method. The why, not just because it happened to turn out a way of an assumption.
8 meters per second, roughly, squared.
Yep.
My hypothesis is that it's because the fabric of space-time is curved by the large mass of Earth, and it will affect the path of objects and light. So how do we test that? Well, if that's true, when the light from a distant star passes our star, it will, according to these calculations, change its path a certain amount.
Well, what calculations? What fallible human calculations using fallible human technology based on a house of cards assumption? Because how do you know the distances of those stars? So again, just a fundamental lack of understanding of just even basic common sense. I mean, we don't even have to go to, we don't even have to really get into Logic 101, reason, critical thinking. We don't even have to go there. I mean, this is children's level common sense. And Craig doesn't have it. Like, how can we really... I mean, this is just getting really rough. This is rough.
That's a prediction based on the hypothesis. So you go and look at a particular time and place when you're able to do that during an eclipse, and you're able to see the stars that are close to our sun and test that prediction. And it's something that can be done over and over and over again. The observation is part of the experiment. The experiment can be going to a certain place at a certain time and seeing if a prediction takes place.
So again, the Mayans did this with eclipses for thousands of years into the future with their flat Earth cosmology. So that, according to these goofs' own so-called logic, I'm hesitant to call it that, but predictions do not mean anything unless you can verify all of the aspects of your either so-called experiment. You can verify all of these variables so you don't fall into these false clause logical fallacies, false dichotomy logical fallacies. Because if you're wrong, you also don't know why. Just like if you're right, you don't know why. There could be 10 different models of Earth. How would each look different than the other? And again, if Craig understood what the scientific method even was, which he clearly doesn't, he would understand the modulations, the manipulations of the variables to prove what is alleged. Otherwise, you're just talking about, oh, this psychic has a better track record than this other psychic, so the house of cards they built must be more legitimate than the other house of cards. I mean, this is the level of goofery Craig is at.
So you just admitted that it's just as valid to say that unicorns are pulling the star's light towards the sun. So you would have no way of substantiating that the fourth dimensional fabric called space-time exists in any physicality anyway, right? You can't substantiate that, correct?
You can call it what you want. You can call it unicorns if you want, but the predictions of the thing that we call space-time show that X will happen if Y is the case.
So, yeah, this is tough because he just keeps spamming the same fallacies and the same fundamental misunderstanding. Let's call it not the mailbox fallacy, Riz, the Bigfoot mailbox fallacy. Assuming that if you predict Bigfoot will put the mail in your mailbox, when you make the observation the following day at a particular time, let's say noon, if the mail is there, that must mean your prediction of Bigfoot delivering it was true. Oh man, unicorn obsession glitch. You guys are hilarious. Wow. So, yeah, I mean, just generally being dumb obviously shouldn't be a dinger or a super fallacy. I think they should be rare events. So I wouldn't have spit my drink out at anything he just said, even though those might have been the dumbest statements in succession that anybody has ever made in any debate. Just the intensity of the statements might not have been enough to spit your drink out. Does everybody agree there? Or do some people think he should get super fallacies or dingers for just repeating that fundamental misunderstanding of the absolute preschool basics of the scientific method? I mean, I don't know. You could, like, I might not argue if people gave him super fallacies or dingers for that. But if we're trying to make them rare, and then if we're invoking the Heracles rule. I think the Heracles rule, we can't give him super fallacies or dingers because we have to adjust this to his baseline, which is so much lower than everybody else's baseline that the deviation from the baseline to qualify for a super fallacy or dinger is not met in Craig's case. But someone else making these same statements, for them, that might qualify as super fallacies or dingers. Is everybody on the same page there? Super fallacy baseline. Yeah, Will Smith. Sphinx Bear agrees. Yeah, I think the ultimate test of this new system will be in the next debate, so we can we can have Craig not involved. Obviously, I don't think I'll ever be able to cover another so-called Craig debate, but we could see how the metrics would work better at somebody with like a little bit of a normalized baseline. And notice how he completely dodged again. I mean, this guy just can't give a straight answer to save his life. And that's for a few different reasons, but the main reason, he doesn't even understand his own religion that well. So he's just diverting and dodging and deflecting. I mean, it's just kind of hilarious to see this level of cope. I mean, I don't know if we've seen it in any other debate thus far. Because he's saying it doesn't matter what you call it, where Caleb wants to focus on the legitimacy of the claims, whereas Craig is just proving his level of mental disability and his allergy to actual science and logic by saying you can call it unicorns. Like, he's basically admitting that, but also notice how he didn't say those words. He just went into his Dunning-Kruger spiral of repeating what he said before without actually giving a straight answer.
And then
Okay.
we test that prediction. That's what we're doing.
No,
as you insist with the
that's not.
scientific, and
That's
we are
not.
All right, hold on a second. Claiming you're using the scientific method when you're not. Is that a super fallacy or dinger? Seeing if something happened as predicted is not testing with the scientific method. Even keeping his baseline in mind, I'm still on the fence on this one. Where's everybody at with that? I mean, he kind of just repeated the same stream, but of fallacies. But I don't know. Are we gonna let him off the hook by saying that his baseline is just so much lower than everybody else? The deviation was not enough for a super fallacy or dinger. Because now he specifically said that what Caleb is insisting of adhering to the scientific method is specifically being done when it's not. Does that elevate to super fallacy or dinger? I guess maybe not dinger, but again, argument from false premise, false cause logical fallacy, reductive logical fallacy, argument from false premise. I mean, he did stack quite a bit there. What does everybody think? Shaq playing toddlers, yeah. Oh, man. Okay. Because I think it's different. Like what he said before were just standard fallacies, misunderstandings, and arguments from false premise. Here, now he's alleging that if a prediction happens, then you're actually using the scientific method to test. I think that's enough to elevate it to a super fallacy. What does everybody think? Glitched agrees. For him, not on the. But even for him, though, because in all of his spewing earlier, he didn't specifically state that the scientific method was adhered to as Caleb requested by observing something as predicted. He kind of did it in pieces. Here, he made a single statement, said that it specifically adheres to the scientific method if what was predicted happened, making the observation of it adhere to the scientific method. Yeah, I'm going super fallacy. Heracles thinks it's not enough for his baseline. What does everybody else think? Exactly, Will Smith. Like, we have to keep the topic of the debate in mind as well. So, if the topic is hinging on science and the scientific method, like we have to consider that, because if it was some other topic and he didn't know what it was, you could say maybe that's a little bit more forgivable. Glitch says stacked super fallacies. Sphinx Bear thinks not enough deviation from the baseline. So no super fallacy, no dinger for Sphinx Bear. So Sphinx Bear and Heracles are against this being counted as a super fallacy. I'm leaning super fallacy. Because this deviation from baseline was slightly greater than what he said before. Now, whether it's enough to qualify for the super fallacy, I mean, that's what we're arguing here. I think the deviation was enough. Yeah, we don't all have to agree. We're just all spitballing here, and we'll do a review at the end. I mean, the system isn't set in stone yet. We're going to review at the end. Sphinx Bear deviation from his base. Well, yeah, because the previous deviations, the Heracles rule clearly said they couldn't qualify for super fallacies or dingers. But this was a step beyond. He's explicitly stating that observing a prediction means that the scientific method was adhered to. Like, he was more specific with it, which that has to elevate to super fallacy. Unless someone has wants to really make a good case that the deviation is not enough, I'm going to count it as a super fallacy. You guys got 10 seconds to make your case if you don't want this counted as a super fallacy. I mean, it's still kind of close, which is why we're discussing it. It's not like the biggest deviation, but it's greater than the others that wouldn't have qualified. So I think it's enough to qualify. Rune has capitulated. Okay, so let's get that in there as a super fallacy. We are at 4 super fallacies. So he would have 176 regular fallacies, because we're not going to double up on those. So let's
That's science.
Steps. Well, it is because it follows
No, it's
the
not.
step.
So my
the steps of the scientific method, which he doesn't know. Because if he knew the steps, he'd be talking about dependent variables, independent variables. So another point, we're not going to count it as a super fallacy again because we've adjusted to the baseline with that new super fallacy. So now he has to deviate even further to qualify for a super fallacy. Is that fair, Heracles? Because with these super fallacies, we adjust the baseline. So now if he commits the same one, we won't count it for the super fallacy because now the average of his baseline has adjusted. Tsutsaka, I just did the opposite. I said we're not counting the number to make it bigger for super fallacies. So does everybody agree with that on the adjustment of the baseline according to the Heracles rule? I mean, this isn't bullying. We're making objective observations. Observing that a duck is quacking and waddling isn't bullying the duck. Like, you know? I mean, I wish Craig all the best. I really hope he gets the mental help he needs. We're examining his arguments, though. Like, what's coming out of his mouth is what we're discussing here. So Dave Scott agrees. So yeah, the Heracles rule should include that we can make that the baseline will be adjusted based on the super fallacies and dingers committed as they are committed. So we won't. He would have to deviate even further for each additional super fallacy. Okay. So let's continue.
And controls instead of skipping over straight from assumption, from hypothesis straight to observation conclusion, completely skipping all of the actual critical steps that make it scientific. I mean, I don't think, have we ever seen anybody this dumb in a flat earth debate? I don't believe we have. I mean, even Sartain is one of the dumbest humans I've ever seen debate anything. He seemed to have a higher level of mental functioning than this guy.
My theory would be just as valid as yours, right? You would say that my reference frame and my theory why light tends towards the sun being unicorns pulling it too would be just as valid as yours if the math worked out, right? It'd be just as valid, correct?
How would you test that theory?
How do you test space-time?
I with something similar to the Eddington experiment.
That's an observation. You're not testing it. That's an observation.
Explain how it is an experiment as well.
Wait, Caleb's saying it's not an experiment. And Craig asked him to explain how it's an experiment as well. I mean, Craig can't even follow basic.
Wait, hold on. So Caleb's not the one saying it's an experiment as well, but Craig asked him to explain how it is an Craig's the only one claiming that observations are experiments. Is that a dinger? I don't know. I mean, again, just keeping the baseline in mind. I mean, I'm on the fence on this one as well. Because I don't know. Because he hasn't asked Caleb to explain something that Caleb doesn't even believe in himself yet. So I think that's enough of a deviation to be another dinger. Yeah, Dave Scott says dinger. Dave Scott's the man. So me too. Because even according to the baseline, this is the first time Craig has asked Caleb to explain something that Caleb doesn't even believe in. so that's clearly a dinger. Dave Scott, yeah, everybody's for dingers. So yeah, I mean, I don't know how that wouldn't be a dinger because he's up the ante in the goofery here. So he's on 6 dingers now.
First grade English here. How can this be a productive debate of any kind?
Okay, that's what I'm trying to walk you through your logic. I'm not saying that unicorns are pulling the light towards the sun.
That's Caleb's problem right there. He's trying to pull a mentally disabled individual through their logic, which is obviously a lack of logic. So that's Caleb's first mistake, unless he's doing this for the audience. But I don't know. Caleb's coming off as like a genuinely nice guy who's trying to help Craig. But if Craig is so far gone mentally, like, how much can you help somebody in a vegetative state in a coma? I mean, there's just the mental capacity to have a conversation, let alone learn something. It's just not there. I mean, look at Craig's face. It's just not there. Again, this isn't part of my argument on flat versus globe or anything, or even part of that's why I always link logic and psychology. I know a lot of people kind of want to stay purely on this is the strict definition of this fallacy, this is the scientific method. But if we're talking about analyzing a debate with human beings, human psychology is going to be a factor. And that's why I always talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect, narcissism. All of these things are huge factors, I would say just as important, if not more so, than the actual validity of the arguments themselves, because what is the goal here? It's not
Mr. 1-to-1 in the house. Not immediately, so we're refining the system completely. So we added super fallacies and dingers. So we're going to do a recap of part 1 and part 2 once this is done and kind of try to finalize what super fallacies and dingers are and how to count them at the end. So part 3 I'll probably get to in a couple of days, but I'll be using the new metrics for part 3, which is why we're doing this here. So Will Smith, actually, we're trying to take the subjectivity out of the scoring. So we're going to see, like, for example, if someone has 100 fallacies, 10 super fallacies, and 100 dingers against someone else who has 100 fallacies, 10 super fallacies, or let's say 500 fallacies, and less super fallacies, like how are we going to stack them up against each other? Mr. One-to-One, were you here for the earlier stream? Because super fallacies can be one, you need one of two things to qualify for a super fallacy. It's either a hat trick fallacy where you stack three or more fallacies in a single statement, which is impressive, which is why it would qualify for a super fallacy, or it could just be one or two fallacies, but they're just so astoundingly dumb that they would make you spit your drink out if you were drinking. Same thing for dingers. Yeah, a dinger is just an incredible cell phone where if you were drinking something, you would spit it out just due to the severity of the cell phone. And also, if there's ever a situation where you would collapse on the floor laughing uncontrollably, perhaps we can count both a super fallacy and a dinger simultaneously, but that hasn't happened yet. So, Glitched, what we were talking about in the earlier stream today is whether or not dingers and zingers should even intersect fallacies. Like, for example, a super fallacy, if we want to make a super simple scorecard, a super fallacy could count as maybe 10 or 25 regular fallacies. And a dinger could take away a zinger. So dingers and zingers maybe can only count against themselves, but they can't remove fallacies. But we'll figure that out later at the end, so let's continue.
Not just pure black and white, this is true, this is not true. It's how humans process information and why to learn from it, which is one of the whole reasons MINDSHOCK exists. So again, Craig, the mental capacity is either just not there.
Well, Dave Scott, so the reason I wanted to add super fallacies is like judging a boxing or a kickboxing or an MMA bout. If a guy, let's say, has 100, yeah, that's why I added super fallacies. Yeah, dingers and zingers maybe shouldn't interfere with fallacies. But fallacies and super fallacies, a super fallacy is like a high power significant strike. So if somebody lands 100 super light tip-tap leg kicks or jabs that the opponent doesn't even notice, and the opponent only lands 20 shots, but they're high power, less powerful shots would win you a decision over a lot of low power shots. So there has to be a distinction there. I don't think pure volume should decide the debate. Yeah, fights have more subjectivity. Yeah, but whether something is or isn't a fallacy is not subjective. Whether something's a dinger or a zinger could be subjective. Yeah, that's true. But that might not affect the fallacy count. Mr. One-to-One. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
I don't believe, this is just my opinion, not part of a logical argument, I don't believe Craig is a good enough actor to not be mentally disabled. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the establishment has such a high budget that they got this phenomenal actor known as Craig, and they just employed him to shill for Globe Earth, again, as part of the Flat Earth PSYOP, which I allege is defending the globe model so poorly as to increase Flat Earth membership to destabilize society. Again, that doesn't mean Flat Earth is true or not true. Nothing to do with the conclusion of that. Simply destabilization, rolling in the New World Order, etc., etc. This is done in many ways. So perhaps Craig really is that good of an actor and he deserves an Oscar. Maybe he is. But just from looking at it and analyzing all this debates, I mean, this really seems just to be a guy with a severe mental disability, but let's continue here.
I'm saying there's no way to experiment and verify either assumption. Therefore, they are not validated by just looking at the stars and their moved position.
I mean, I'm sorry, I gotta stop it again, but how pathetic is it that Caleb has to walk through first or second grade science with a supposedly functional grown adult? I mean, how pathetic is it that Caleb even had to say what he just did? I mean, I don't know if I can get over that. The fact that he even had to explain that simply making an assumption and observation is not a valid scientific experiment or valid scientific methodology. The fact that he had to, and look how confused Craig is. I mean, he's like looking to the side. He doesn't know quite how to mentally process that. I mean, this is the bleeding obvious to such an obvious. I mean, how could it be dumbed down even further? Again,
I didn't realize how funny I was. I actually don't watch these back after I do them. So, because people say that I'm really funny, I that is pretty funny. I mean, he does look incredibly confused that someone just said that simply making an assumption is not a valid scientific experiment or scientific methodology. But yes, Will Smith, that is subjective, whether or not what would cause a person to spit their drink out or not. Especially if someone said something so dumb, it adjusted the baseline. If they said the same thing again, even if it caused you to spit your drink out the first time they said it, it wouldn't cause it the second time. So yeah, that's a good point, Will Smith. And I think also the subject of the debate. So for example, if the debate was, I don't know, who's a better pop star, Britney Spears or Michael Jackson? If you don't know the steps of the scientific method for that one, that wouldn't necessarily make someone spit their drink out. So the parameters of a different type of debate might have different qualifiers for a drink spitting threshold. But let's continue.
is this simply like trying to have a conversation with a coma patient?
Which, again, if you look at the star plates from Arthur Eddington in 1919, not all the stars move towards the sun. So I guarantee if I look at all your other observations, not all of them are moving towards the sun either. So again, your theory falls apart just by looking at the evidence.
Okay, so yeah, it is an experiment. The fact that you predict something to happen at a particular time.
That doesn't make something an experiment. So this guy doesn't know the definition of experiment either. He doesn't know the definition of science. He doesn't.
Here comes the Bigfoot mailbox fallacy. But again, I'm not going to count this as a super fallacy or dinger because Craig has adjusted the baseline that this deviation is no longer enough. Heracles, that's the Heracles rule.
know the definition of science, experiment, and he had to look up.
Yeah, Dave Scott. Once we decide and get this new system dialed in at the end of this, I'll come up with new sound effects and official graphics for. I'll make them different colors and everything. This is just the temporary rough draft version. Wait, what's brutal glitch? What's brutal glitched?
Energy. I mean, this is really pathetic.
Oh yeah, his baseline deviation. Man, Heracles really saved the day with that one because I didn't think of that. But that's brilliant. That actually solves the problem perfectly, and it stays in line with the parallels and analogies to combat sports. Because yeah, you're not gonna judge a power shot, a significant shot versus a non-significant shot. Mike Tyson's significant shots and non-significant shots are a lot different than some scrawny guy.
Then you go and check that thing at that time. Is that experiment?
No, it is not. Again, I mean, is this guy this utterly clueless? He doesn't understand what dependent variables and
The shock and awe in my voice is just absolutely hilarious because I really wasn't prepared for this level of gophery. But it's just, this is the first time I've listened to it since I recorded it. So it's just the shock and awe and disbelief that someone could be this clueless in my voice is hilarious.
dependent variables and controls are, let alone their role in making something scientifically valid. This guy might be just the poster child for scientism and the Dunning-Kruger effect. Because all he has is his blind faith in the authorities. They told him this was the assumption and this was the measurement. Therefore, it's true. completely abandoning the scientific method, because the scientific method is all about dependent variables, independent variables, and controls. So you can see, you can modulate, you can manipulate the variables to get different results based on different theories, so you would know what the true cause is instead of hallucinations, which is all Craig has.
No, that's not an experiment.
Please don't interrupt me. You've even got an IV and a DV there. It's very simple. So it is an experiment, whether you like to say it or not. That's why it's called the Eddington experiment of 1919.
Whoa. I have to stop this here. Just because something's called an experiment doesn't make it an experiment. We can call something the unicorn moon juice experiment. If there aren't dependent independent variables with manipulation of the variables and controls, that's not an experiment just because you call it an experiment. I think we have to. Is that a super fallacy or a dinger? I'm leaning dinger on it, and I think it's enough of a deviation. Just because you call something doesn't mean it's true. The fact that Craig doesn't know that and is saying that the Eddington experiment is a valid experiment because experiment is in the name, I think he meets the burden for the deviation. What does everybody think? I think that would be a dinger. Heracles votes dinger, and Heracles, who created the Heracles rule, what do you think, Dave Scott? Does that meet the burden for dinger? Claiming something is an experiment as long as the word experiment is in the title of something claimed to have been an experiment. That's funny. I think that's a dinger. Let's get some feedback here. Glitch dinger. He's held to a higher standard. Yeah, that's a dinger. Dave says that's pretty bad. I mean, just because you call something, that doesn't mean it is. I mean, if you can call Batman, that doesn't mean he's actually a bat or half bat, half man. I mean, are you going to argue he's got 50% bat DNA because his name is Batman? Because if he didn't have 50% bat DNA, he wouldn't be called Batman. But since he's called Batman, that must prove that he's got at least 50% bat DNA, according to Craig. Will Smith voted dingers. Yeah, we're all getting desensitized. I mean, this baseline is insane. So we're going to go another dinger here. Something isn't true simply because it claims to be true in the title. I mean, how does Craig not know that? I mean, even if you tell a preschooler that I don't know, you call a cat a car or something, and you say this is a car, and the preschooler would know that it's a cat but not a car. But if you come up with the name car, does that make otherwise why would you call it that, right? Like, calling something doesn't make it accurate. Oh man, this is insane. All right, so he's up to 7 dingers. So with the new system, Craig now currently holds the record for most super fallacies and most dingers.
You can call it anything. You call it the hoax of 1919. Calling it the hoax of 1919, that doesn't make it a hoax. What made it the hoax was the fact that they dismissed all the observations that didn't match, didn't have definitive controls, didn't manipulate the variables, didn't have accurate technology to make the measurements they were purporting to measure.
Can you imagine if Caleb just countered with, well, it's actually called the hoax of 1919, and that's how you know it's a hoax, because I'm calling it the hoax of 1919. Like, evidence be damned. Self-admitted discounting of all the evidence and observations that didn't match be damned. As long as we call it the hoax of 1919, according to Craig, that would make it the hoax, using Craig's so-called logic. Thanks, Sphinx Bear. We try here. We try. I mean, we're trying. It's tough, but we're trying. Mr. Wonder, Batman just identifies as Batman. It might not even be a man by 2024 standards. Can you imagine? Like, Catwoman takes up the mantle of Batman, calling herself Batman, but she still has her normal Catwoman costume. Or should she start calling herself Catman with the same exact costume and curves on her body? And she gets all offended whenever Batman calls her Catwoman. She's like, no, I'm Catman now. That's offensive. Who cares about robbing, stealing, and killing in all the comics? Inaccurate pronouns is the ultimate sin. Can you imagine just thinking something has to be accurate if it's in the title? I mean, glitched, I would like to, but I mean, I can't handle it either. Could Catman get pregnant? Oh man, Batman has a baby with Catman, who is actually Catwoman, but calls herself Catman.
And admitting the bias.
Batman. Mr. Wonder. Is the new comic series, they're going to change the name to Batman and Catman?
From the outset, I mean, just the level of mental disability here by Craig, I don't know if we've seen anything like this. So I don't think he's going to unseat Sartain in terms of the amount of fallacies and the Dunning-Kruger champion, but he's clearly much more severely mentally disabled than even Michael Sartain.
And as for some of the stars moving away, yeah, that's actually part of the predictions, because the stars do have their movements naturally throughout the night, but only the ones that were extremely close to our star.
Wait, did he just say? Wait, did he just say the predictions are part of the observation? Is that what he just said? I was still laughing from the Batman. Like, did anybody catch that? Did he just say the predictions are the observations or part of the observations? Was anybody paying attention? I lapsed because you guys are just way too hilarious in the chat. Is that what he said? Did he say the predictions are part of the observations? All right, nobody. We were all laughing about Batman. Sphinx Bear says yes, he said it. I don't want to run it back because I think it's gonna jump back like at least 2 or 3 minutes if I try to push it back, and then we're gonna have to listen through more of this. Are we trusting? Are we gonna? We know they move, he said. Well, I mean, there's a difference between hallucinating, you know something, which, I mean, that's common. Like, even outside of Craig's own baseline, a lot of these people argue like this. But I don't know if I've ever heard anybody say that observations are part of the prediction. Or the prediction is the observation. Should I move it back? All right, let's move it back. Let's try to be accurate.
No, it is not. Again, I mean, is this guy this utterly clueless? He doesn't understand what dependent variables, independent variables, and controls are, let alone their role in making something scientifically valid. This guy might be just the poster child for scientism and the Dunning-Kruger effect. Because
no more Batman jokes, please. We gotta focus here.
all he has is his blind faith in the authorities. They told him this was the assumption and this was the measurement, therefore it's true. Completely abandoning the scientific method, because the scientific method is all about dependent variables, independent variables, and controls, so you can see, you can modulate, you can manipulate the variables to get different results based on different theories, so you would know what the true cause is.
Yeah, but Heracles, according to your own rule, we have to adjust to Craig's baseline. So whether it's remedial or not, we have to keep his baseline in mind.
Instead of hallucinations, which is all Craig has.
It's
No, that's not an experiment.
Please don't interrupt me. You've even got an IV and a DV there. You know, it's very simple. So it is an experiment, whether you like to say it or not. That's why it's called the Eddington Experiment of 1919.
You can call it anything. You call it the hoax of 1919. Calling it the hoax of 1919, that doesn't make it a hoax. What made it the hoax was the fact that they...
Oh, we were laughing so hard, I forgot to add him the dinger for saying you call something that... That's how hard we were laughing. He's actually on 8 dingers. It's a good thing I rewound that, because we forgot the dingers, and you guys were all sleeping and didn't notice that I didn't add the 8th dinger for saying that something is... as long as you call something, that makes it true. So he's had 8 dingers. Or wait, that was the 7th dinger? Oh, that was the 7th dinger. Never mind. I got the overlay on here, so I did catch that. Yeah, you're right, Heracles. I was just laughing so hard. Because the overlay is, this is like a rough draft, so the overlay is across all of it. So whether we go back and forth, the super fallacy and dinger count won't change because I just have a single overlay here. Yeah, we were all laughing so hard. So, okay, so yeah, no, he is at 7 dingers, and we're reviewing whether or not he said that a prediction was an observation or something remedial like that. Well, this is actually under remedial. I mean, this is... I mean, even children probably wouldn't. Would children confuse observing something with predicting something?
dismissed all the observations that didn't match, didn't have definitive controls, didn't manipulate the variables, didn't have accurate technology to make the measurements they were purporting to measure, and admitting the bias from the outset. I mean, just the level of mental disability here by Craig, I don't know if we've seen anything like this. So I don't think he's going to unseat Sartain in terms of the amount of fallacies and the Dunning-Kruger champion, but he's clearly much more severely mentally disabled than even Michael Sartain.
And as for some of the stars moving away, yeah, that's actually part of the predictions, because the stars do have their movements naturally throughout the night, but only the ones that were extremely close to our star, the path of the light coming from.
How does he know how close or far any of the stars are? I mean, where's the verification of the...
No, I don't think he said that. He said it was part of the prediction, unless it's after this moment. We gotta stop laughing and just focus here. Stop it, Dave Scott, with your Batman hashtag Batman. How did we get to the gender issue from the 50% bat DNA? How did we make that jump? Who was responsible for that? Who was responsible? Was that you, Dave?
The distance. I mean, does he just have hallucinations, blind faith in this religion of scientism? I mean, how does he know these distances? Because someone said, someone claimed? Where's the verification? So he's just stacking this house of cards. And he even has pride in stacking. Like, look at the level of mental disability on his face. He's actually proud of this religious blind faith in distances because he's just assuming it was all accurate and building assumptions on top of assumptions while hallucinating there's nothing wrong with assumptions, while not knowing what the scientific method even is.
That star past our sun.
Yeah, for someone else, I would count that as a super fallacy. But keeping in mind Craig's baseline, I wouldn't. Is everybody in agreement here? Because he's already established that he doesn't know what the scientific method is. So I would say that's not enough. Just all of this post hoc, I don't think that's enough to elevate to super fallacy or dinger based on his baseline according to the Heracles rule. Is everybody agreed? Sphinx Bear, it's amazing. Heracles, it says so sad, but I agree. Yeah, Rune agrees as well. Yeah, I mean, he's established the baseline. So for anybody else, this would be a huge deviation, but not for him. So we're not gonna count it for him.
Only those ones were predicted to move a noticeable amount.
Okay, hold on. Only the ones that were obviously deviating were the ones, or obviously moving away, were the ones predicted to have done so. I don't know. He's pushing it here. He's pushing it. So he's just ignoring all the ones that didn't. In just this post hoc spiral of just matching everything up after the fact and pretending and hallucinating that's what was predicted. It was all part of the prediction. I mean, he's pushing it here. I don't know. I don't even considering the baseline, he's pushing it now. What are we going to do? I mean, he's pushing it. It's right on the fence. Angela, how's it going? Did you just get here? We're deciding on super fallacies and dingers. We are refining, reaching new heights, isn't he? Yeah, well, new lows, technically. So, super fallacies are either three fallacies stacked on top of each other or more in a single statement, or just a fallacy that is so incredibly dumb you'd spit your drink out if you were drinking. And dingers are just incredible cell phones that are just so incredible that, again, if you were drinking something, you would spit your drink out in disbelief that somebody self-owned themselves that severely. So we're trying to decide, and then Heracles made a brilliant rule here that kind of solved a lot of our on-the-fence problems on whether or not we should count something as a super fallacy or a dinger, where it has to be individualized to the person. So if Craig's baseline of goofery and disability is so much lower than everybody else's, he would have to say something way dumber than an average person in order to count as a super fallacy or dinger. So that's what we're working with. But even for him to just magically ignore and pretend only the ones that moved a certain amount were the ones predicted to move in terms of stars, I mean, that's pushing it. Heracles says, I think it reaches super fallacy based on a baseline to stack ratio. Yeah, I'm gonna go super fallacy. I'm gonna go I think it's silly enough. What do you think, Dave Scott? What does everybody else think? Also, like the desperation and cope in his voice to try to explain away and do all these desperate mental gymnastics when Caleb calls out the fact that a lot of stars didn't really have any movement to supposed redshift, gravitation, whatever. And yeah, Glitch says super fallacy. Riz thinks we're gonna need a chart. Dave Scott, what do you think? Yeah, Yep, Dave Scott can always be counted on for tiebreakers. So we're gonna go super fallacy for that one. Neil agrees as well. So the super fallacies would be subtracted from the regular fallacies. So at the end of this, if these are the final numbers, we would have to adjust his fallacy count to 185 with 5 super fallacies. So let's continue.
Would affect their normal movement. The other ones had movement that was more than the movement that would have been applied by the light from them passing near our star.
And the reason we're not counting all of those as super fallacies is because with each super fallacy or dinger, the baseline is adjusted as per the Heracles rule. So with the new adjustment, now those aren't super fallacies, even though he's technically spiraling with the same points. Mr. One-to-One. I'm going to do a Maxwell and say, what was the question?
What is the difference between an observation and an experiment?
An observation could be an experiment if you.
Okay, hold on a second. I don't know if that's the first time he said that. I think he kind of spammed through it. But Caleb, so hold on a second. We have to also factor how clear and succinct the question was. Like, for example, if Caleb asked that specific question clearly, and then Craig had a moment to pause and reflect and think of an answer, and he says, an observation can be an experiment, that's not the same thing as in the middle of a spew of fallacies over a previous irrelevant point. That might not have counted as a super fallacy, but I think the context here needs to count as a super fallacy. Are you guys saying that should be a zinger for Caleb or a dinger for Craig? Sphinx Bear, that made me spit laugh. I mean, yeah, the first time I went through this, I almost didn't catch it because when he was spewing all those mental gymnastics earlier, that was built into his false premise, but it wasn't isolated like it is now. So it's almost like in the middle of a flurry, like in a boxing match, you might not be able to tell how many big power shots or jabs there are in the middle of a high combination exchange. But here, when like at the beginning of a round, if someone like took a whiff and the other guy countered with a hard shot, it's a lot more clear. So we have to factor the context here. I don't know if I would count that as a zinger per se, because let's say Craig answered the question correctly. Would that have been a zinger? Not really. I mean, the fact that he had to ask the question is wild, but I wouldn't count that as a zinger for Caleb. I counted him other zingers on questions, on super basic questions, but for this one, I don't think I would, just because Craig theoretically could have answered the question and then it wouldn't have appeared quite as dumb. I don't know. I mean, that's up to interpretation as well. Sphinx Bear, and he paused before he said it too. Yeah, I think that meets the deviation from the baseline based on the pause in the specific question. So that should be a dinger, I would say. Are we voting dinger? Dave Scott says dinger. Or it should be a zinger for Caleb and a dinger for Craig. I think it's a dinger for Craig. What does everybody else think? Heracles votes no, not enough of a deviation. But I'm going to invoke a new rule, the context rule. Because based on the context, being given an extra pause instead of being in the middle of some kind of flurry of fallacies. It is repetitive, but the context of it being isolated and so obvious, exposed with a pause before answering, I think that makes it meet the deviation. Why are you bringing up JR? Well, yeah, Will Smith, I mean, a question, yeah, if the question itself was the dismantling. So you could get a zinger for a question, but again, if Craig had answered the question accurately, then there's no way to count that as a zinger. But if it was a situation where it was a zinger that the fact the question had to be even asked, which there were other situations like that where I did give Caleb the zinger in those other situations. So regarding the dinger, what does everybody think? I think this is a dinger. Dave, did you comment on this? Oh yeah, you said both. It's okay. So Heracles says no, it's repetitive. I believe the context is enough to overcome the Heracles rule. Sphinx, yeah, okay. Dave Scott, Sphinx Bear says dinger. Okay, so let's give him the dinger. Also, on the first stream, I specifically brought up a chat GPT question that is an observation and experiment. And in no uncertain terms, chat GPT said no and explained it. That was on the first stream earlier today. So if it's that basic, I mean, even with Craig's baseline, I believe it's enough to qualify for a dinger.
Make a prediction for a thing to happen at a particular time.
So based on those baselines, maybe we can't add further super fallacies or dingers because with that previous context, the baseline has been readjusted again. So so now we might not be able to count them because we already spit our drink out. And even if we started drinking again, just the astounding level of stupidity, it wouldn't be enough. Like he would have to deviate even further for us to spit our drink again. Is everybody agreed there, or should we add more dingers or super fallacies there? Because I think we can say that baselines can be reestablished in real time. So even if he's making a single sentence, if he hits a dinger or super fallacy in the middle of the sentence, we can immediately readjust the baseline to not hit him with further dingers or super fallacies by the end of the sentence. Is everybody agreed there? Does everybody agree with the real time adjusting of the baseline? Will Smith agrees. Dave Scott agrees. Sphinx Bear agrees. So yeah, we won't add additional super fallacies or dinger. Yeah, particular topics should have particular baselines as well as the individual. So again, if somebody was arguing on who's a better pop star, Britney Spears or Michael Jackson, we wouldn't necessarily have to give dingers or super fallacies for things that are not related to that. Whereas here we're specifically talking scientific method and strict validity, supposedly, because Craig is at least pretending, I guess, to be after the truth of reality. I mean, I don't know if he really is. So let's continue.
Wow. Wow. I'm gonna need a break here, people. I'm sorry. I can't do this. The guy doesn't even know what oh man. I mean, some definitions, I look for this really simple website, like for children, like sciencebuddies.org. I mean, it has step by step on what is the scientific method. How is it tested with an experiment? What are variables, dependent and independent variables? What are control?
This replay, like, I'm so Caleb is Caleb can't believe it either. I mean, Caleb needs a medal for putting up with this. I mean, I might need 10 more parts just to accurately do this analysis because we've never seen anybody like Craig before. I mean, we're all just astounded by this.
Roles. I mean, even on sciencebuddies.org, you can look at writing a hypothesis for your science fair project, and it'll take you step by. I mean, this is things that Craig doesn't even understand. I mean, these are basics. These are such basics here. I mean, just going from here, whether it's a fair test, you change only one factor at a time while keeping all other conditions the same. And scientists call the changing factors in an experiment
glitched. He's built different, that's for sure. That's for damn sure.
Variables. Independent variable is the one that is changed by the scientist. Dependent variables are the things that the scientist focuses on to see how they respond or change, or to the change made by the independent variable. A control variable are quantities that a scientist wants to remain constant, that he or she must observe carefully as carefully as the dependent variables. So again, this is on sciencebuddies.org. I mean, I know Craig is mentally disabled, but if he spent at least 5 minutes just learning the basics instead of
the disbelief in my voice at his inability to understand this, or the fact that he would even go on a public debate to humiliate himself like this. Like, again, this is the first time I've watched this back. The disbelief in my voice is hilarious.
Humiliating himself like this. Like, how much? What is the amount of money somebody would accept to humiliate themselves publicly, like Craig is doing right now, not even knowing what a scientific experiment is versus a non-scientific experiment? Like, clearly demonstrating he doesn't understand variables or variable manipulation or controls. He doesn't understand the role of technology in making observations. He doesn't understand what even a house of cards is and how any of the frame of even the experiment is verified, like the distances of stars. I mean, what would the average person take? How much money would it take to publicly humiliate yourself like Craig is doing right now? I mean, I don't know. But I need to take a break, guys. This is going to be a two-parter. I can't do it. I'm sorry. I can't do this in one go. I do need to take a break from this level of...
I'm so surprised. It's so funny. You guys must have been laughing so hard when you were watching this part one of this analysis. Like, I was literally in disbelief at this level of goofery, and that's why we have to refine the system, because even if Craig can't beat Sartain's total fallacy count, that doesn't mean he shouldn't be crowned the Dunning-Kruger champion. Just like, oh no, don't start with the Batman. Just like in a boxing match, if one guy only got like 50 power shots in, but his opponent got 150 love taps and 0 power shots or 1 power shot, can you really give the love tapper the win? I mean, I don't think that's fair, because the other boxer landed way harder shots, even if fewer.
Goofery and mental disability. I knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't know it was going to be this bad. So I will finish this one up hopefully next time. So yeah, I mean, I just need a little break. Give me a little bit more time. I'll do the second part. But this was just really, really rough.
I like how I honestly thought I would have been able to finish it in just one more part, because I didn't know that Craig was able to sink even farther than this, but he continues to surprise.
Hope everybody out there enjoyed another edition of the MindShock podcast. In this logical analysis, you can help support our podcast, donate to our PayPal, help us get more logical analysis out there. Logic and reason, obviously, going extinct in this world. We got to do our part to keep it alive, bring it back, so we don't get this level of goofery just destroying all society here. So you can donate to our PayPal. Check the link in the description. You can become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.
If you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to MindShock. This is your host, Bruce McGuire, and this is part 2 of the...
I like how energized I was at the beginning of that. I wonder how my voice is going to be at the end of part 2, because I have no idea what's in store for me.
Logical analysis of the Flat Earth debate between Craig of Fight the Flat Earth and Caleb, KCD Industry. And once again, I do have to apologize. I am only a mere mortal. It's very difficult to handle the level of mental disability and goofery that Craig is putting forth here. And I have to hand it. I have to hand it to Caleb. I have to hand it to...
I don't know any physics professor that would say that an observation is an experiment. I mean, I don't know any single one.
Austin Whitsitt. I have to hand it to Jeranism. I have to hand it to anybody who could handle this level of goofery. I mean, it's tough. It's tough. Just getting through this debate was so tough. I'm going to try to bang this out in one more part. But again, I do apologize. And I apologize in advance if I need to make this a 3-parter. I'm going to do my best to finish this up now. But again,
are we going to take bets on how many parts this is going to end up being? Because I don't know if I could finish it in 3 or even 4. I mean, I don't know.
I am only a mere mortal. I'm just a man.
I think Bryant Myers knows what the scientific method is. I don't believe he got that wrong. I'm not even 100% sure they discussed the specific steps on that debate with Whitsitt and Jeranism.
There's only so much that I can handle, and I have no idea how some of these people can handle these multi-hour discussions.
I mean, Bryant Myers had trouble with controls, but I don't think he wasn't claiming the scientific method was followed in those determinations. Like, for example, whatever he was showing with ships over the curve, whatever, I don't think he was claiming that that was a scientific experiment that followed all the steps of the scientific method. He was just presenting it as evidence, if I remember correctly.
With these mental midgets, again, that was not part of the argument, which is why it's not an ad hominem logical fallacy. For all the clueless goofs out there that do not understand how logical...
He did, but I don't think Bryant Myers claimed that it followed the scientific method explicitly. He used them as proofs. I don't remember him saying the words, "this followed the scientific method."
Fallacies work, like clearly Craig. And notice how Craig, in his triggered stupor, him and all his fanboys that have been trolling the comment section on Twitter and on YouTube here under my logical analysis here, notice how not a single...
Thanks, Dave Scott. Shout out to the MINDSHOCK crew tonight. History was made. It sure was. Batman. Maxwell Army mailbox fallacy. Big storm hitting my area, glitching my internet. Sorry to hear that, Dave Scott. Hopefully it's stable enough to keep up here. Always love hearing your input, especially that Dave Scott is responsible for the dinger category itself.
Single one of them demonstrated how what I labeled as a logical fallacy wasn't actually a fallacy. Notice how they have not been able to refute a single point made. And they also hallucinated that either I'm dumb or wrong and pretended that all I did was call Craig a goof. Now, I'm not going to deny that I objectively called him a goof, because obviously he's a goof. A goof is someone who's silly, is goofy, obviously, no logical capability, or playing stupid, whatever, intentionally, unintentionally a goof. They completely ignored 99% of the presentation. I mean, I have all of these sources from... I mean, these are academic sources, Harvard, various different papers, clearly demonstrating that Craig is not just completely and utterly clueless, but he didn't even regurgitate the religious tenets of his scientism.
I didn't realize how funny what I'm saying sounds with the freeze frame on Craig's face. Because like I said, I haven't watched any of this. Like, I don't watch it back when I record it, but it's just kind of hilarious listening to what I'm saying with the freeze frame on Craig's face.
As it pertains to the theory of relativity, in particular, what Craig is inaccurately calling a scientific experiment. So Eddington's observations, his fallacious tests, they didn't even predict anything accurately. So Craig is hallucinating and pretending and claiming that these predictions were accurate. Now, even if they were accurate, like, you know, the Mayans with their flat earth cosmology accurately predicting eclipses, actually predicting That doesn't make the reasoning behind it true, just like it wouldn't make relativity true. But the point here is Craig is so utterly clueless and ignorant of basic physics history. He made the claims that these tests were done and they were repeated and repeated and they were all accurate. They weren't. That's the whole point. I mean, he's not even at a first grade English comprehension level, let alone a middle school or high school understanding of any of this history, because in the subsequent tests or observations, obviously this is not scientific experiment. Eddington's experiment was clearly not scientific. And again, notice how all these goofs and trolls and Craig fanboys, and again, I'm not even sure if they can be real fanboys. They're probably paid shills. I mean, what kind of a functioning human being would actually be a fan of a goof like Craig? I mean, I don't know. Maybe the mentally disabled stick together and stick up for each other just for being on the same mentally disabled team. Probably paid shills. I mean, who knows? But notice how they couldn't refute a single one of these points. They continued to hallucinate that I'm the one that didn't know what I was talking about. And notice how I'm the only one that brought any sources whatsoever to the table. Because Craig is just regurgitating the religious scientific dogma, but he's not even sourcing the dogma. He's not even sourcing where Eddington's claims came from. I'm the only one that actually looked at any historical sources. I'm the only one that provided any actual definitions of anything being discussed here. Whereas all Craig did is hallucinate and bring forth these religious regurgitations from his cult. And all of his supporters and the trolls in the comment sections, they couldn't refute any of it. They have no sources of their own. And they can only cry on how I was somehow randomly dinging him. I mean, the dings are for each and every fallacy. I actually missed a few when I went and looked it over. I actually missed a couple for Craig. He committed more. And I think I might have missed one or two for Caleb as well. I actually don't even remember, because he did, obviously he wasn't doing a lot of talking. It was mostly Craig with his religious regurgitations. But let me finish the intro here. Obviously, if you want to help support MindShock, help bring back logic and reason to a world where it's quickly going extinct. I mean, do you really want a world full of Craigs? I mean, that's scary. I mean, and there's a lot of these goofs out there. I mean, I don't know if they're as dumb as Craig per se, but there's a lot of them out there. So that's the difference in terms of what is or isn't a fallacy. When I clearly lay out the entire argument, demonstrate with empirically verifiable definitions for all of these terms, both scientific and relating to the fallacious, to the logical fallacies themselves, and then I call Craig a goof, that's not a fallacy. Whereas Craig claiming I'm wrong and I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm stupid, or whatever, or I'm dumber than flat earthers, or whatever the goof said in the comment section, that's fallacious because there's no argument there. If he provided the argument and then said that's why I'm dumber, then it wouldn't be a fallacy. Is everybody following here? I can't believe I even had to boil it down. I can't believe I had to...
Yeah, Craig's baseline is tough. Oh man. But yeah, we got to give props to Heracles though. The Heracles rule, it basically saved us in this analysis, because I thought we'd still be arguing over basically every single fallacy being a super fallacy or dinger if we didn't have the baseline consideration.
Lower that to like a first, I mean, that's probably kindergarten level, maybe even preschool.
Yeah, thanks, Will Smith. I actually, like I said, I'm surprised that there are even this many subscribers. Not because I don't think there are this many logical people out there. I think there's probably like at least 1 million logical people in the U.S. alone. Probably at least another 1 million, 2 million, 5 million throughout the rest of the world. It's just the likelihood of them finding this channel. I mean, a lot of them probably don't even have the YouTube app and wouldn't even go on YouTube. So to be even at 10,000 subs, I was pretty shocked. I was pretty surprised there were that many people interested in applying logic and reason for the sake of applying logic and reason, instead of just jumping to random conclusions on all these different topics.
Maybe even preschool. I mean, I don't know. There might be some smart preschoolers out there. But if you want to help support...
Yeah, are we insulting preschoolers by saying Craig isn't even on a preschool level? I mean, I don't know.
Support MindShock. and help me continuing to do what I do, exposing these scientism cultists, bringing down the IQ levels of everybody. You can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. You can support the MindShock channel by becoming a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Twitter, Facebook, and Patreon. Patrons do get priority.
Well, you know what's curious, Sphinx Bear? Appeal to popularity is a fallacy for a reason. Because there are, like, again, herd mentality where people just go along with the herd. They're not actually critical thinkers capable of logic and reason. I don't think it's anything new, but it's also a spectrum too. I think people were more capable in the past, but not necessarily smarter. Hello, Brian. Yeah, Eddie Bravo actually invited me on his podcast, which if I do one, that'll probably be one of the first. I'm going to have some guests on as well soon. I'm still kind of just sorting out a lot of things and trying to catch up on podcasts because I have so many dozens and dozens of podcasts I work on at the same time.
For case topic, logical analysis, co-podcast requests. You can also be a guest on the podcast depending on your tier. Questions, comments, theories, thoughts, suggestions, rebuttals, debunkings of any kind, leave them in the comment section. Okay, before I continue the analysis right where we left off, I am going to read a comment from a patron, Scott Free, a very, very astute listener who had some great observations. Here's one of his comments. Because of the continued shower of sparks resulting from this supremely mind-shocking video, it is a little difficult to focus on all of the thoughts this video is provoking in me.
I would say they taught various forms of logic probably up to 1990 maybe. I mean, most of the time they'll teach the definitions, but they won't teach the applications. Even on debate teams, it's actually very limited on how to use it.
And I am not even finished. But I just have to say something before heading to work. The discussion surrounding redshift alone is just invaluable. I had always taken Eddington's results as one of the evidential pillars justifying relativity. So to hear the results so thoroughly investigated is both mind-shockingly and heroically important. Great work, Bruce. And again, it's not just him. I mean, I look at Craig. A lot of these cultists, they look at Eddington's so-called results. Keep in mind, they threw away everything that didn't match over
the Freddy Krueger effect, the Dunning-Kruger effect. Yeah, I'm going to be doing a big podcast on this. I'm actually working on a comprehensive book on the Dunning-Kruger effect and its role in society over the past few decades. And obviously, there's been a huge downturn in Western society, and the Dunning-Kruger effect is a pillar of that. I've also expanded upon it versus its strictest definition in order to be able to apply it to more of psychology. Yeah, Heracles, yeah.
400% error in predictions versus future observations, which also might not be accurate. The error rate might be far greater than that. I mean, this is best case scenario. This is the admitted 400% off. This is best case scenario, is these astronomical errors. And this is why most scientism cultists hallucinate that relativity actually is backed by something. I mean, look how many times Craig repeats the fallacy. The stack of fallacies, rather, not a single fallacy. Because that's all he has, and he didn't even source it. That's the thing. I mean, there's scientism cultists out there that could at least provide the sources, but he never does. Notice that. Very, very telling. And none of the triggered goof trolls provide any kind of sources either. I always do, of course. They're on the screen right now. But anyway, yeah, so Scott Free is definitely not alone in thinking that Eddington had some kind of substance there, which he obviously did not. Continuing his post here, what I and so many perhaps accidental supporters of scientism have fallen for is an epic appeal to authority, monolithic structure. And we have trusted the people that have communicated Eddington's results without investigation. Excellent point, Scott Free there. And think about the mental strength Scott Free has to have in order to admit that to himself. So this is an individual who is clearly not a narcissist, whose ego has him on too short strings to re-examine any of these things. Because obviously clueless goofs like Craig, I mean, these narcissists, these mentally disabled narcissists, I mean, let's not fall for false dichotomies. Mentally disabled people can be narcissists as well. Just look at Craig. They just don't have the mental strength. Forget about intelligence. Mental strength is a different category. You could be extremely dumb, but mentally strong. You could be extremely intelligent and mentally weak. So these are all obvious possibilities. But Scott Free here has the mental strength to re-examine. And just on that point, I'm going to go over one more quote that I've gone over in the past a number of times. In regard to the religious cult of scientism, but I will do it again because it's so related here. On Richard Feynman, one of the most celebrated so-called scientists, he had a very, very interesting quote on what science is. Science is the belief in the ignorance of the experts. So a clueless, bootlicking, authority-worshipping cultist goof like Craig, if he sees something written, oh, Eddington predicted this, oh, and it was accurate, oh, and every subsequent test matched those predictions, he's not going to fact-check any of that. I mean, brain-dead goofs like Craig, they don't fact-check anything. It's their core religious tenets. It's blasphemy to fact-check what the priests have preached. They have to take it on blind religious faith. They have to. That's the way their brain or whatever's in their head that substitutes for a brain. Because I don't even know if Craig can tie his shoes. Should we start a poll? Who thinks Craig?
Rune, the historical review versus unhistorical review. Technically, it could be either in front of an H, depending on how you pronounce the H. If you pronounce the H as a vowel, or if you don't. So, I mean, obviously this is Harvard, so you would think. So this was published in 1980. I'm not 100% sure if there are certain, like in Britain, like Welsh pronunciations or Scottish pronunciations. I'm not well versed in the UK pronunciations. So it may or may not be a grammatical error. It's based on how you pronounce the H. So that is a tricky one. A lot of people don't know that. It's not automatically a grammatical error. You would think Harvard would have it correct, but again, it would depend on how the H is pronounced. And I know the UK has variation even between all the different areas in the UK. Is historical pronounced historical in British or historical? Or something in between that, which would leave it ambiguous whether or not you would use an A or an AN in front of it. We went from Batman to the pronunciation of H's in Britain. But Mr. One-to-One said he's in the UK. How is H pronounced? With an H. It's not pronounced historical. Historical review. Historical review. Historical. You'd have to make it a hard H. Riz is laughing. This is hilarious.
Can tie his own shoes, because I mean it's kind of difficult to believe that Craig can tie his own shoes. What does everybody think? Do you think he's capable of tying his own shoes? So here's the full quote from Feynman. Learn from science that you must doubt the experts. As a matter of fact, I can also define science another way. Science is the belief in the ignorance of the experts. When someone says science teaches such and such, he is using the word incorrectly. So obviously that's the vast majority of goofs out there. Science doesn't teach it, experience teaches it. If they say to you, science has shown such and such, you might ask, how does science show it? How did the scientists find out How, what, where. Not science has shown, but this experiment, this effect has shown. And you have as much right as anyone else about hearing about the experiments, but we must listen to all the evidence to judge whether a reasonable conclusion has been arrived at. So you can see that Craig here and a lot of these other scientism cultist goofs are clearly not following this at all. They just took it on blind faith. They never demonstrate how. I mean, Craig, literally all of the verbal diarrhea coming out of Craig's mouth is just nonsense because he never once says how. He just repeats and regurgitates the dogma and then is outraged when anybody doesn't accept the religious dogma at face value. Because again, he claimed, oh, Eddington's experiment, he calls it an experiment, it showed this, it proves this. The Coriolis proved this because of the spin. He never once says how. Notice that. Notice that. He's bottom of the barrel. This is why it's very difficult. I mean, call me crazy. Call me fallacious. I am going to appeal to incredulity right here, and I'm not going to deny it like all the clueless goofs. I'm going to appeal to incredulity. I find it extremely difficult to believe that Craig is not legitimately mentally disabled. Or, again, he's just this phenomenal actor, and the Globe Earth shill budget is far greater than any of us can imagine. I mean, they could just pull these actors that are better than anybody in Hollywood like Craig, if he's not really mentally disabled, and just play this level of stupidity so convincingly. Because he's convincing. I mean, I've never seen somebody who's not actually mentally disabled be so realistic in portraying mental disability as Craig. So again, Craig not once can demonstrate how or why, because again, he doesn't understand the scientific method. He doesn't understand the manipulation of variables. He doesn't understand false cause logic and fallacies. He didn't even study the religion well, because he doesn't even know that his own religion of scientism doesn't even match the claims he's making. So, continue. Oh, and for the source, Feynman said this at the 15th annual meeting of the National Science Teachers Association in 1966. For all the goofs that are going to claim he never said that. Okay. And again, even if he wasn't the one that said it, the merit behind what he said. Because if goofs like Craig actually understood that, they would have examined Eddington's alleged experiment, seen how all of the non-matching data was thrown out, how all of the follow-up tests, I mean, they're getting error rates of over 400%. So it didn't match the prediction in the first place. So is it reasonable to conclude that Eddington proved Einstein's relativity in any way? Obviously, anybody with a functioning brain would say no. So continuing Scott Free's post here. Just one note about the psychology of Craig, who really is an enigma as to whether he is so dense as to not realize how absurd he sounds, or as to what his motivations are for subjecting us all to such a painful display. The cult of scientism is so pervasive that I think a lot of folks like Craig are so excited to participate with the orthodox approved institutions of science that they willingly dive into the whole fictional belief system without any scrutiny. One small example being Eddington and the redshift, and happily digest, believe, and repeat the gibberish is because at root it makes them feel smarter than other people. It strokes their ego and makes...
It's Scott Free not in the chat right now. I'm reading his comment. He's pretty sharp.
Makes them feel as if they are in the club of knowledgeable ones, in quotations. It is the same propaganda tactic as managing to convince so many people that anyone who would take ivermectin, a drug on par with aspirin until recently, is so stupid because suddenly science, in quotations, now says it's a horse dewormer. Without noticing that yesterday ivermectin was considered harmless, they gleefully chortle at the idiocy of people who would take ivermectin because today scientific authority Fauci says it's a horse dewormer, and that is all the science, in quotations, that the mob needs. Excellent points by Scott Free, a very, very astute listener. And shout out to all the logical Mind Shock listeners. Again, I know I go on and on about the Dunning-Kruger crowd and all the cultist goofs, all the brain dead cultist goofs, the Dunning-Kruger crowd. But yeah, I mean, obviously, the whole reason I do the podcast is I know that there are a certain amount of logical individuals out there. I'm actually kind of surprised. I never thought I'd have as many subs as I actually do now. And I've even gotten messages like on Facebook and other places of triggered goofs who they don't like the way that I objectively call out goofery and the Dunning-Kruger effect, the scientism cultist.
And on that note, I think that's just a result of the participation trophy generation. Because they can't take any criticism, and if there's no winners and losers in participation trophy, if there's no hierarchies of any kind, they don't like how bluntly I call out the goofery. And then they just get all triggered.
They consider it insults because obviously they ignore 99.9% of all the podcasts. They ignore all of the sources on the screen. They ignore the substance of everything I say and only focus at the goof that I throw at the end. I mean, there's just no shortage of these people who claim that I just call anybody I disagree with a goof. Disagree with what? I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue other than the empirically verifiable scientific method that children can know. And just the basic definitions of words. I mean, that's really the only.
You know what's crazy? We're living in times where supposedly even empirically verifiable definitions in any dictionary or encyclopedia are not only disputed but outright denied. In the first stream I did earlier today, at the beginning of the stream, I actually went over just the definitions of logic. The definitions of a logical fallacy. I mean, the fact that a claim needs to be made. And all of this, apparently, Craig doesn't get it. All of his followers don't get it. All the triggered goofs and trolls don't get it. I mean, we really are living in unique times when literally what should be the absolute least controversial aspect of anything is what is being denied.
Positive claims I've ever made. I'm not claiming a shape of the earth. I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue. I mean, just the level of goofery and not being able to comprehend the very motto of this podcast. The only thing we know for sure is that we don't know anything for sure. So, yeah, I mean, just these triggered goofs coming out of the woodwork saying that I need to have more humility. I mean, what's being more humble than saying I don't know anything? All I can do is offer empirically verifiable definitions of words. You know, the established scientific method. That's all I really do. That doesn't mean I'm smart or above anyone. A lot of these triggered goofs, I mean, they're so dumb. They're not even on this basic children's level, so they have to pretend I'm so far above it and looking down on everybody instead of
No True Scotsman. That should be the name of his channel instead of Fight the Flat Earth. It should be called No True Scotsman.
me being at a normal children's level and them being so far below. That's why they're so triggered. Because they're not even at that children's level, so they have to pretend that I'm somehow being condescending or pretending to be a know-it-all, while the entire motto of the podcast is me not claiming anything at all is true or untrue. I mean, just the level of goofery and triggering of these people. I mean, they prove the points against themselves more than I ever could. But enough of that. Let's jump back into this display. I mean, something that's just, I mean, again, props to Caleb for handling this level of goofery and Craig. And because Craig just humiliated himself again going on with Jeranism in a debate, which this one was a longer one. I'm going to have to dissect that one again because just, wow, if you think Craig is bad here, I mean, he might even get worse here. I mean, I don't know. Like, he might be really providing some competition for Sartain. Again, his verbal diarrhea game, it's just not as good as Sartain's. Like, that's the problem. I mean, he spews fallacies with the best of them, but the rate of the spew might prevent him from taking the Dunning-Kruger crown. But we shall see. So, let's continue here.
An observation can be an experiment.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, right off. Wow.
So now that the baseline was already established, does the emphasis on yes, that's not enough of a deviation from the baseline, is it? Because we do have to factor the emphasis. Like, he didn't just say, yeah, it can be. He said, yes, with the nod and the determination. Does that elevate it to a dinger or super fallacy? I mean, he was so emphatic with that yes. Come on, Heracles, what do you think about that? And Dave Scott, if your internet is working, like the emphatic nature of the yes does that deviate enough from the baseline based on the emphasis? Heracles says it's tight, but yes. What does everybody else think? And would that be a dinger or super fallacy? Because obviously that's argument from false premise, but is it more of a cell phone or a fallacy? That's another question. Heracles, what do you think there? Will Smith says, I don't think so, but he's not surprised enough. Or you're not surprised enough personally. Like, let's say you took a break from Craig, like and then you come back to it. Like, let's say you're at the arena, like the boxing ring or whatever. You go to the bathroom, go get an extra drink, and come back, and you hear how emphatic that yes is. Even though you heard him previously say that it was the emphasis on yes, would that be enough to spit your drink out, even if you had previously heard him say similar things, but without that level of emphasis and determination of head nod? There's no way Craig has a wife. Like a human wife? Sphinx Bear thinks it's a cell phone. Heracles says dinger. Yeah, if you went to talk to some functional adults, a few hours came back later. Yeah, I think it meets dinger status. Technically, it could be a super fallacy too, because even though it's just argument from false premise, just the emphasis on it. Mr. Wonder. Well, no, does anybody believe he actually has a human wife? I mean, I don't know if he has a wife or not, but it is kind of hard to believe that it would be a human wife. I mean, I'm not claiming anything is true or untrue, but I just, I have no idea. Are we going dinger or super fallacy? That's tough. This is tough. Third category, a Craig. I mean, technically, dingers and super fallacies were both created because of Craig. So those two categories are already because of him. Riz says dinger. Yeah, I guess we can go dinger. Batman, what? Oh man, Batman's not going away, is it? Will Smith says dinger. Okay, yeah, let's go dinger then. So he's up to 9 dingers. It's funny. He got a dinger on the 194th fallacy and the 195th. But again, factoring in the context, the pause, the determination, and the head nod, I think it's in enough of the deviation, so we can go with that.
So Craig is just flat out saying that an observation alone can be an experiment. So clearly he knows none of the steps of the scientific method. Again, Caleb, I have no idea how you do this. Because he's kind of like just circling the drain of bottom barrel, even for mentally disabled people. There's so many mental disabled people that are they're not that dumb. They're like way smarter than Craig. So like I'm not insulting mentally disabled people. There was a comment somewhere also saying that I was like discriminating somehow against mentally disabled people. If somebody's short and you call them short, that's not discrimination or hate in any way. That's an observation. If you call somebody a blonde or a brunette, that's not discrimination. You're not saying they don't deserve something or they don't deserve human rights or hating on them in any way. I'm not hating on Craig even here at all. I mean, I feel sorry for the poor guy. I mean, unless he has some kind of fetish for just humiliating himself publicly if he's not mentally disabled, or even if he is. I mean, I have no idea what his true motivations are, but how do you not feel bad for a guy that publicly humiliates himself to this level? I mean, is there nobody around him that cares about him and doesn't want his either mental disability or playing mentally disabled to just be on display like this? It's just really sad. It's really, really sad. But props to Caleb for being able to handle this.
If you didn't know that, that's fair enough. I understand that you've never studied physics, but
Oh man. Oh man. Should there be a category for psychological projections? But no, Riz, you have a point. We can't really if we make any more categories, it'll be too difficult on the screen. But would that psychological projection have been a dinger, though? I'm not saying it for Craig, for someone with a different baseline. Maybe it would. But yeah, I don't know if that's enough for Craig just based on his baseline. Everybody in agreement? Or is everybody still laughing about Batman wife? Fingers. Sphinx Bear, you're hilarious. Yeah, nobody thinks that should be a dinger, right?
Wow. Okay, so now he's psychologically projecting. We spent a lot of time on Dunning-Kruger and mental disability, but I don't know if we specifically spent a lot of time on psychological projection and how accurate it is. So notice how his subconscious is now exposing him, because he's either clearly never studied physics, or he maybe tried to study it but clearly didn't comprehend anything. I mean, not even the scientific method.
You learn these things when you physics, that over time things can happen. You change the position.
Over time, things can happen.
Should that be a dinger or a super fallacy? Over time, things can happen. Oh, man. Sphinx Bear, is that no dinger for over time things can happen, or for the previous psychological projections? Over time things. I mean, I think that's a super fallacy, because that's that's a red herring, a non sequitur. I mean, it's like you're kind of saying being intentionally vague. Over time, things can happen. Mr. One-to-One votes super fallacy. Yeah, I would say that's a super fallacy. Over time, things can happen. Oh, man, that's tough. Yeah, obfuscation. Yeah, I mean, I guess we could also summarize that as a fallacy of clarity, also known as fallacy of vagueness. Just using vague language. So that would be at least 3. Sphinx Bear still laughing. Over time, things can. Well, this is from the same guy that brought you all these other gems that we've been going over for hours. Heracles says Dinger. Over time, things can happen. I mean, I don't know if, based on his baseline, I think it fits more with super fallacy. Because for someone else, that would definitely be a Dinger and possibly also a super fallacy. But for him, with his baseline, because a super fallacy, anything that's at minimum a hat trick fallacy has to be a super fallacy regardless of baseline. So, red herring, fallacy of clarity or vagueness fallacy. It's also a non sequitur. I mean, he stacked 3 fallacies at minimum. So that would qualify as a super fallacy regardless of baseline. What if nothing happens though? Mr. One-to-One. Yeah, I mean it depends on the situation. That's why it's a fallacy of vagueness. So I'm going to consider that a super fallacy. Technically, it could be a Dinger because that just sounds dumb. But again, keeping his baseline in mind. Sphinx Bear votes Dinger because of the level of confidence of delivery. I mean, we do have to factor that. I mean, for anybody else, we would probably count it as both a super fallacy and Dinger, because you could fall on the floor laughing at someone saying over time things happen with a straight face, thinking it's some kind of legitimate argument. So yeah, I'm voting super fallacy because even with his level of context based on the Heracles rule of his particular baseline, that even though he delivered it confidently, keeping his own baseline in mind, that's not enough of a deviation, but because he hit the hat trick on the fallacies, it would qualify as a super fallacy. So I'm going to give him a 6th super fallacy there. He was pretty confident about saying that. Riz. Heracles, you're right. It's borderline both. I think for anybody else, I would put it both, but just because of his baseline. He's got a very special baseline, so we have to keep that in mind.
Oh man, wow. Did Craig miss his calling as some kind of like mentally disabled comic? Over time, things can happen. I mean, these kind of intelligent thoughts. I mean, this level of insight. I mean, have we ever seen anybody on this kind of intellectual?
You know, it's funny. I'm not actually trying to be funny when I'm saying that. Like, I'm honestly just making observation. I don't realize how funny that sounds.
Level? I mean, is Craig going to go down in history, this intellectual powerhouse that says that over time things can happen because nobody's ever known that? I mean, that is truly revolutionary. I mean, that's probably evolutionary even among the so-called intelligentsia of the world. I mean, over time things can happen. Is that dumb? Is that more or less dumb than his OC response? What do you want it to be regarding the definition of energy? Because that was a good one too. I mean, wow, this is crazy. This is crazy.
And the time you go and look at that thing to see if that thing has happened, and if that matches your predictions, then voila, you performed the experiment. If it
Bigfoot mailbox fallacy.
doesn't match your predictions, you've performed the experiment and you've failed to falsify it, or you actually falsified.
Wow. So again, just to clear for anybody who can't follow here, I mean, it's just a clear demonstration of his mental disability. He doesn't know what independent variables, dependent variables, controls are. He doesn't know all the steps of the scientific method or how to apply them or the role of these variables. That's why I threw them on the screen.
I'm going to actually jump. We're not going to finish this in part 2. We're going to need a part 3 of refining the system. Just because, I mean, we were still unprepared for Craig, but we made huge progress thanks to Heracles with the Heracles rule. So let's, I'll do this until we get one more super fallacy or dinger, and then we'll finish up next time, probably tomorrow.
I mean, I don't know how many preschools learn this, but I did find preschool worksheets. I don't really remember preschool, but I don't think I learned the scientific method in preschool. I don't even think I learned it in kindergarten. It probably was more of like first grade, second grade. But there's clearly worksheets out there for preschoolers, even non-private preschools. So some kind of, I don't know, government preschools, kindergartens, whatever. They're on those websites. So again, Craig he's not even at that preschool level. So what can you really do with this guy? I mean, I think I accurately called it at the beginning. I mean, borderline vegetable. I mean, can this guy tie his own shoes? We do need that poll. I mean, I would actually be shocked if he could. Can he? I wonder if he's...
I actually gave Craig props because apparently in one of his meltdown videos, he actually, Sphinx Bear, something like that, 5-10 minutes. I mean, I want to go one more dinger just so he gets around 10, or if it's a super fallacy, 7. So Craig had a meltdown on Twitter or on a video. He did another meltdown stream, and he posted a clip where he actually showed proof that he can tie shoelaces. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine being that insecure that you actually post a video demonstrating you can tie shoes just because someone questioned your ability to do so? I mean, that's insane, right?
If he's gonna take that challenge and upload a video of him tying his own shoes.
Yes, Riz, he actually did that. And he was proud of it, too. I'm so surprised. Actually, you know what? Let me go to that tweet. I'll read it. If I can find it. So, Math THFCX on Twitter. He was actually in the earlier stream today. He posted that I requested a poll asking whether or not Craig could tie his own shoelaces. And he put up a poll. 63% said no, 36% said yes. And then Craig responded with a video proudly. His response was, "I did it on stream." And then my response was, well, Matthew responded, "You actually tied your shoes on stream to prove that you can do it." Whole bunch of laughing emojis and a crying emoji. And my response was, 1, I really am impressed, proud of you, little guy. 2, the fact that you were that insecure about your ability to tie your own shoes that you felt the need to demonstrate to do this demonstrates more about you than you can comprehend. But yes, Craig actually made a video of him tying shoes. Loops or not. I mean, I honestly didn't even watch most of the video. I just skipped through it, but it looked like he was successful in the end. Heracles said, "I have a video of my 3-year-old doing that." And Craig was so proud that he could do it too. Like, he was so proud to post the proof and to jump in with the tweet in response to the poll. Like, wow, it's crazy. It's really, really crazy. Tied laces confirmed. I wonder if somebody was off screen, like, doing hand motions, helping him out. I mean, I don't know.
In that case, but
So-
absolutely, making an observation at a particular time and place can be an experiment. Absolutely.
Okay, so observation and experiment are synonymous to you?
An observation can be an experiment.
I'll ask the question again. Are an observation and experiment the exact same thing, or are they different steps of the scientific method?
Observation is step 1 of the scientific method. Okay. Experiment is step 4 of the scientific method.
Okay, so I don't know if he's just reading off a cheat sheet or a screen here, but yeah, this is tough. I mean, this is just really tough because even by his own words, again, maybe he wasn't looking at the cheat sheet before, the preschool cheat sheet, but now he's looking at it. If an observation is an experiment, I mean, if these are different, he's admitting they're different steps, but they're the same thing. So why abandon the rest of the scientific method? And again, notice how since he doesn't know what the scientific method even is or what the variables are, and that manipulation of variables is what lends scientific legitimacy, because then you know what you're testing instead of just hallucinating and guessing like a psychic or something. If the psychic made the right guess, that must mean they have psychic powers. According to Craig, yes. According to Craig, yes. According to basic logic and reason in the scientific method, no.
But an experiment can be an observation of a particular thing happening. That would be the prediction. The prediction you would...
The experiment can be the observation of that thing happening. Oh man. Oh man. I know it would be a little repetitive to ding him again for that. But yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. You want to see the video? All right, hold on. I'll put it on the screen. I think people were actually super chatting how he was successful enough to do that, to make that video. For some reason, it's in weird clip mode. Hmm. It's not letting me. Let's see if I can get the clip. Yeah, he shared it as like a clip of the bigger video for some reason. He couldn't even make it like a real clip. It's like youtube.com/clip. Well, actually, I'll just put it in a chat. See if that works. It's 29 seconds. He actually looked like he had a little bit of trouble doing it. He did the rabbit method. Mr. One to One.
Make is, if our case, my hypothesis is correct, then I predict that at this particular time we will be able to observe the path of the light from a star being bent.
Okay. Oh man, I don't know if I can make it through this. I mean, Caleb is just such a soldier to be able to handle this level of mental disability. Because Craig's just spinning his wheels here, but the thing is, he's not even accurate because Eddington's predictions didn't even match. Like none of those predictions matched. They threw out the results that didn't match. There's over 400% error rate in subsequent so-called observations. So that's not a match. So it's not. It's like spinning your wheels, but you don't even have tires on the wheels. I mean, and you forgot to put gas in the car, and you're not even on the road where you're trying to go somewhere. I mean, that's what we're dealing with here.
That's the prediction. The experiment is going to that place at that time and testing that prediction by setting up your equipment and monitoring what has happened.
Testing a prediction is monitoring what happened. Wow. Is that a Dinger super fallacy? You have to set up equipment. Like, you can't observe without setting up equipment. I mean, now, I think this meets the criteria for another Dinger. I think it does. What does everybody think? You have to sit, not only do you have to set up equipment to observe, but the observing itself is the testing. Wow. Wow. I think that's a Dinger. I would put that as a Dinger instead of a super fallacy because it's kind of humiliating to think that. Oh man. I think that's a Dinger. What's everybody voting? This will be our last one before we break and then we can resume tomorrow. Yes, Sphinx Bear agrees for the Dinger. Heracles, what do you think? The fact that you need to set up equipment to not only monitor or observe, but the setting up of the equipment and monitoring is the test itself. Oh man, that's how you test it. You don't manipulate variables or even acknowledge that the variables exist. You just set up your equipment to monitor and observe. That's the test itself, which, according to him, is also an experiment. Heracles says Dinger, so the maker of the Heracles rule agrees that it's a Dinger, and we got the Dinger. So Craig is at 10 Dingers. Wow, yeah, this was insane. But I think our criteria is pretty good so far. I mean, there's not an overwhelming amount of Dingers, so real-time adjusting of the baseline is key here. I believe that was the key. So big thanks to Heracles, everybody. Riz, oh man. Okay, so we are not done. We're gonna have to finish this up, but I think our metrics are pretty good. I'm pretty happy with them. I think this will definitely work, and then we can reevaluate everything at the end. I don't know what time I'm gonna do the stream tomorrow. Maybe more in the middle of the day because I went earlier today and then later in the day at night. So I mean, depending on time zones, I'll probably try to go more midday or close to midday for most early afternoon for the average of the time zones, whatever that's gonna come out to be. So thanks again for joining us, everybody. Big thanks to Heracles. Yeah, I'll put up an announcement. I'll probably do maybe a 2-hour heads up and then a 1-hour heads up and then a 10-minute warning. I'll do it in the YouTube community tab and then also on Twitter. But yeah, big thanks to Heracles. Big thanks to Dave Scott. They are largely responsible for helping us refine the metrics for these logical analyses of these debates. And big thanks to Craig. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have seen how necessary it was to even refine all of this. So, so thanks everybody. Hope everybody enjoyed another edition of the MindShock podcast. If you want to help support the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell for notifications. You could also become a YouTube member right here on YouTube. Help support the channel that way. Like and share Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, Patreon. This is Bruce McGuire signing off. Catch you guys next time.